serious, please. So, welcome everyone. So we had a few organization sessions, and we happened to have dessert together. So we kind of know each other, and one of the tasks I have today is to like discipline them into giving you all the knowledge that they have. See what I'm dealing with? We are talking today about Apple as an example of, we have them. The title, as an example of a company, a manufacturer of connected devices, to like in the broadest sense, that has taken up a few measures, at least that's what they say, to enforce better personal data protection for all their users. So our discussion today, which will, I hope, be pretty animated, will be on how successful is this? Is this something that other manufacturers and editors, software editors should do, and so on. And so to join me today for this discussion, I have three distinguished guests who I bugged very much before, for they give me a short bio. So let me start with Ralph Shadowski, so I'm sorry, I'm not botching your name, is an analyst, a networker, and he loves to convince critical organizations to gain and keep control over information with the implementation of different approaches, both organizational and technical. And he has a huge team. I'm sure he will tell you about it in a moment if the discussion comes to this. Too long story short, he has a lot of people who rely on him for help, for guidance, and he's here to share part of this with us. Next to him, Arash Mirdamadi, again correct, is a senior IT consultant, and Arash has a lot of experience with Windows. I have a few problems on my own, we'll check this afterwards. And also with cloud systems, which, very current topics. And you've been in the field for like 20 plus years, so you've seen a lot of things come and go. And your perspective will be very interesting to all of us today, also because of this, because you have seen things go and come again and evolve, and you have a specific combination of knowledge where technical knowledge meets organizational and governance expertise. Thank you for being with us. Could you please switch off sound? Thank you. And the most difficult name to pronounce.
Sorry.
Koen Matthijs.
Well done.
Thank you. He's a business unit director, and he specializes in privacy, security, and data management. And currently, he has a very interesting endeavor around knowledge sharing, because he's expanding his employer's operations in the Benelux and the Nordics. And especially he deals with, building an academy, and he has a few ideas on certifications. Perhaps we'll get to that later on. So thank you all. And at the end of this, I wanted to make things a little more, interactive and human. So I asked them to think of the last book they have read, and why it resonated with them. So that's one thing I will ask at the end. So if you are searching for books to read, this is the right place to be, But without further ado, I would like to start with our topic today, which is, Apple's App Tracking Transparency initiative. And so basically, from April 22, since April 22, what Apple did is to deploy with iOS 14.5 a measure where you can basically restrict which third-party app editors have access to your unique advertisement identifier on the iPhone. Arash, can you show your iPhone? Because I have an Android. No, that was like kind of a joke, because we were like, okay, so how is Arash gonna talk about Apple and say bad things for them if he's having an iPhone, you know? But no, this is ironic, don't mind me. And so basically the idea is, okay, so if users can, you know, decide who gets that personal information from them, how what the impact of this finally control has on the different users. And basically my first question to all of you is, how efficient is this opt-out? Like, do you know whether people are actually using it? And is it really delivering the promises it held, you know, when Apple rolled it out? So who is the first one to jump in? No, don't fight for who is not.
No, so I did some research, and apparently last year in 2021, when Apple started with providing the opt-out possibility, at the end of 2021, more or less 70% of the people choose to opt out, and that was quite an amount of people. And it was also a bit a problem for parties who offer the apps, because 70%, that's quite an amount. And all those data that were tracked, and to, just like mentioned in the morning, to innovate and to invest in, for example, a new app or new possibilities in the app. That's a problem, to innovate further with that data that was collected in the past. Now it's not possible anymore, so for such kind of companies it's quite a problem.
Yeah. Well, actually how efficient it is, it's a bit relevant, relative, because in some ways it has been efficient, but in other ways it has not, because our data has been collected already since a very long time by different way of collecting data. What is Apple doing now is a first step toward a very long way, and I was very happy to see it. Until recently I heard something very disappointing about Apple itself, that Apple is not keeping the promise they made themselves. So they say we are not tracking our users. They made a huge publicity a few years back. What's happens on your iPhone remains on your iPhone, and they are not living up to it. And now they are in a class complaint in California because they violated the California law on privacy, and it's very, I think it's very bad for Apple.
Maybe, Arash, we need to ask, are there, how many people are using an iPhone?
Guess more than the market share, isn't
Yeah.
Okay.
it? More pricier.
Okay.
And how many have opted out? Okay. Do you still get targeted advertisements? Yes, no? Yes? No? Okay.
Both.
Both?
I don't remember being asked.
You do not remember. I guess that so many people have given consent to so many apps, to so many purposes. No one can remember where we did give consent in the past somewhere. And Caroline, in the last panel, said it's a lot of topics about consent. You know, consent is so relevant as one justification out of many to collect and to process some kind of data. And by the update of Apple, we get aware where we already have given consent in some kind of third-party apps, and now they have to ask again. And we say, really, did I give consent to that? And then you have had the chance to opt out in that moment, of course, again, it's like a little bit, you know, get rid of all the waste you have collected on the smartphones. And if you watch worldwide, we have more than 5 billion of smart devices available on the planet. And only a small market share is with Apple. Apple is very prominent, running marketing like hell, but it's a small market share. But they give us a chance to recognize again where we did give the consent to, and we have no clue what's going on with all our data where we have given the consent to.
Can I ask just a quick
We'll keep the questions for the end, please, because otherwise we're never gonna stop discussing and out of here. No, I have a few other questions for them, and then it will be up to you to enrich, you know, the debate. So what you're saying, all of you here, is that even though I have this opt-out, I don't have any peace of mind, right? So kind of, you know, I still get tracked because, you know, the Apple's approach only concerns one identifier. What it means is that all the other apps that have their own trackers, they continue tracking me, right? And all the apps that are in the Apple's ecosystem through the App Store and stuff, they still continue to get a share of other informations than, you know, the advertisement identifier. So you were like interested to address the question, is it as simple as Apple asking for consent to be compliant with various privacy regulations, or are there other reasons?
Yeah, just like you mentioned before, if we have a closer look, it's not because we now opted out that our personal data or that we will not be tracked anymore. And that's a false feeling of safety, a false feeling of they respect my privacy. And there I think that we as an expert in the matter of privacy or security, we need to look deeper than that. It's not because they give us the option as an opt-out that they will be compliant to some regulations. It's more a brand image that they want to build, that Apple respects the privacy of their users. And I had a part of an interview or an article at CNBC, and I will read it. While the changes have been marketed as a win for users, they're also benefiting Apple's advertising product, Apple Search Ads, which marketers are turning to for mobile ads that drive app installations. So then you know that it's not about the privacy of the people using the Apple product, it's more for their own brand image. And that's maybe something that we need to have a closer look on, that it's not just doing about being compliant with regulations, but you need to have a closer look, you need to look deeper than that.
So to enrich, you know, to build on that, a question I have for all of you is, so Koen mentioned earlier that may be seen as killing innovation, so I have that question for you as well. Is Apple actually killing innovation? Not necessarily for itself, but for others, because, you know, it's restricting access to specific data to third parties, basically, in specific conditions. And so what happens, I mean, that was when the measure was announced, you know, big PR support, everyone was like, marketing advertisement companies were getting a little bit scared of, thinking like, okay, but so how are we gonna, you know, earn money? Because, well, the substract of what we need to operate, it's not there anymore. I mean, will not at least be there from the looks of it anymore. So are we seeing a situation where one big player, unilaterally, if you like, decides to, well, stop other companies from developing their business and basically from innovating? Who wants to?
Is it stopping? Is it just not asking for an additional consent, and then you can collect and process the data as well as a third-party vendor? And I guess that how you call it, privacy by design, what is regulated in Section 25 in conjunction with Recital 78 of GDPR, is a relevant factor for vendors of digital products, no matter what kind, whether it's a medical product or it's an iOS, it's a smartphone, it's any kind of software in your home security environment, what else in your fridge, in your telly, whatever you use. And if you get an idea that you will be asked whether you want to deliver this kind of data, then it gives you a good feeling. It's a USP. It's a unique selling point to the companies, demonstrating compliance to GDPR as an additional feature. And of course, it's your own decision whether you agree on it or not, whether you give consent or not. And this is about our fundamental rights. But we're talking about GDPR to the companies on one hand, and I tell you, from my point of view, data protection and privacy starts at the subject. We have to make a decision on what kind of information we want to share, using WhatsApp, driving in a modern car, using a modern telly, and all this kind of stuff. And just for having this another additional feature, it's up to you what's happening. And a lot of people, also the younger ones, even in school education, should get some kind of awareness what's happening, and then you can make your own responsible decision on whether you want to share it or not. And in that moment when you make the consent, to most of the people, they just want to get rid of the consent. They just want to get rid of the consent. They just want to get the additional feature, and this is really hard to believe from a DPO perspective.
Arash?
Well, Ralph said it very well. At the end of the day, it comes down to us as subject matter, as user. The choice is with us. We can make a choice to share our data, to give our data or not give it. Sometimes it's difficult because if you choose not to give your data, of course you cannot use innovation or you cannot take advantage of all technology that is available now. But that's your choice. But you must be given the choice and you must be made aware of your options. You have to be aware of the risks. You have to be aware of what happens with my data, what's the consequence. Data is the new gold. Data, the price for data is even more expensive than oil now. And data is being collected in so many different ways. Now we think Apple is offering us the option to opt out. Okay, very well. First, they don't keep up the promise themselves. Second, there are so many other ways that are collecting our data. We are not using only iPhone, or we are using smart home appliances, smart TVs, other applications. Applications are collecting even your voice. If you allow access to your microphone, when you are not calling Siri or Google, I don't know what, or Amazon, they are constantly listening to you. And I had that experience. I was talking to a friend on the phone about a brand for the first time in my life, a brand that you can find in supermarket in Belgium. And unbelievable. 20 minutes later, I got publicity about that brand on Instagram. And microphone on my telephone is forbidden access to every application. If you see my telephone, nothing has access to nothing. As much as I have the control, of it. Everything is closed. If I need a microphone for like WhatsApp, I don't use WhatsApp. For other programs, I open it then and I close it again. You may call me paranoid, but
at least we can call you.
This is the new age of technology we are living in. It might sound a bit awkward or weird, but if you are aware of all the risks that exist, using your personal data, and sometimes against yourself, it's advertisement, okay, it's just a good part of it, but it can be used against yourself when you go to an interview for a job. They can do research about your identity on social media and see what the person you are, what is your beliefs, and they start to profiling you. So it goes very far, and we must be very much aware of all these risks. And then after that, we have the choice to, based on those risks, to make the best choice that we want. Some people want to share more data than the other people. It's their choice. Some people share data because they are not aware of the risks. But if you tell them about the risk, they change their mind. Like 70% of people who opted out. Some people are very conscious, or some people are a bit crazy like me. They do a lot of research and they don't share anything as much as they can. At the end of the day, it goes about awareness. The first and the most important thing, in my opinion, awareness. And then it's the choice. We have the choice. And then it's zero trust principle.
So let me rewind this a little bit, because we are talking mindsets, and what you say is kind of making me feel a little bit uneasy, because you remember, well, most of us are of age to remember when internet was in their beginnings. No, I didn't say we are old. I said I said we have gained value, okay? And some of us are vintage. No, he likes that I'm bugging him. So let's remember, you go to a cafe in the morning before going to work, you order an espresso, you read the newspaper that's on the account, in front of you in the cafe. You finish your coffee, you go out, you go to work. Who knows, you drank a coffee between, 8 and 8:30 in that place, that you read this and this article in that, left-leaning newspaper. Who knows that? Well, you know that, and probably the guy at the counter who served you coffee and who kind of saw you were sifting through the newspaper, okay? So that's the situation we know, like the regular situation. We do not have an equivalent to this with digital, right? And so the way I'm hearing you, and that's why it's making me uneasy, is that in the mindset of, if I want to have the similar situation online, I will have basically to stop doing certain things just because other organizations and companies are not respectful of the law, and kind of try to use and abuse my data, even though I would like to prevent them from doing so. So that's where I'm kind of uneasy. Kun, I'm seeing you reacting to this.
Yeah, I'm more or less agreeing with Ralph and with Arash that privacy, it starts with us. But the obligation is not at us, it's at the companies who use our data. They have the obligation to respect our privacy. And from that point of view, I think that there is quite a lack of transparency. Just like you mentioned, you go to a cafe, you drink a coffee, you read the newspaper, and you leave. Okay, there is also a part of intimacy and privacy. You don't think that the bartender will shout it out on the street, "Hey, do you need to know something? Koen went here for a coffee." Yeah, that's something that will never happen. But when you use your iPhone or your smartphone, then it's not that transparent that the data that you share with them will be used for other use or to reuse that data. And I think that the problem is that the transparency of the use of the data, there is really a lack of. And I think that can really be something also for Apple, but also for other tech companies to work on.
Which gets me to when we discussed, because we prepared, okay, for this discussion, Ralph was mentioning something around obligations for manufacturer of digital products, right? Yeah. And you were mentioning that those manufacturers will be obliged by EU law to integrate data protection into their products in 2024. In 2024, sorry. So can you tell us a little bit more on this? Like, what are those obligations that you mean? And basically, something that's dear to your heart around data by design. Why do we need kind of to make privacy by design, sorry, like a legal obligation for manufacturers to start using it to gain a competitive advantage,
Yeah, it's a little bit like the discussion on the last panel. It's a journey. Yeah, data protection and data privacy, whether you call it GDPR or different acts in the different countries, in addition to GDPR, this is only the regulation on top. This is like a little bit like rate planks to the companies, but there's much space between them. So there's plenty of space to organize the handling of data. From my perspective, any kind of data protection regulation, acts and policies and all this kind of stuff, this is not a barrier to the companies, it's just an orientation. And if you stay compliant to this kind of complication, policies and procedures and all these acts and regulations, then it helps to address the market. I'm actually a responsible DPO to more than 400 clients, a lot of them in the healthcare. And actually we're working on 500 medical projects worldwide. And if you want to transfer medical data, PII, from a patient in a hospital who is going to death, it's really hard. If a children is in front of you and is dying, and this is the last chance to become part in this game, in this project, and maybe because those guys at Pfizer or where else on outside the European Union can deliver some kind of help, yeah, you can even in that moment stay compliant to GDPR by using pseudonymization with PII, with PIDs, with personal identifier, instead of using real data. And then if they find a solution for delivering some new medicine to these children and staying alive, is really worth and very satisfying to a DPO to work on issues like this. And a lot of medical doctors feel, in a way that GDPR will destroy medical science. It is not. Just bring it to a clear point, support them, and GDPR is at no way a barrier. But a lot of subjects just give every day their data away like it's not worth any kind. And what Erd and Cohen already said, it's a new oil of the century. If you go to a fair, what they collect on kind of data. In the 70s, I'd said it 2 hours ago, not only in the meaning of that was the first act we have had on the world, but in the 70s we discussed whether a terrorist would get a digital, how do you say this? The digital braces, whether we can trace them or not, whether this is allowed, whether this can be allowed or not. And today, everyone from us has 1, 2, or 3 smart devices, and we are tracked in every second. So it's our decision whether we agree on this or not. And in the last discussion, your colleague said, you give something, you receive something. When, for instance, using Google Maps or what else, it's your decision. But afterwards, it's for a defined purpose and not for other purposes. And it's your fundamental right also to ask Google, what kind of data, for what purpose did you collect and process from me as a data subject? And they will answer. And now I ask the audience, you're all working in a company, ask your own company whether they can also deliver this kind of information on your data subject data, on your PII, what kind of data they have collected, even your employee, a customer, or what else, and only a few can do. And that's why we are working as data protection officers every day when we bring this kind of professional service, with our 600 cybersecurity experts and our 40 data protection officers to the clients. This is really hard work, but this is really valuable.
Thank you, Ralph. That's enlightening. Because I'm mindful of the time and I would like to leave space for questions.
Yes, please.
So I have one, maybe two last questions for you before opening to our guests. Okay, we have a situation where we have, let's say that's my last question on Apple. We have a situation where all those devices that we have, the phones, the bracelets, the whatever, the watches and things like this, those, I mean, we didn't ask for them. That's a situation where nobody, at least here, went to Apple and said, oh, can you please do a smartwatch? So at some point, we are also kind of predated upon by, companies deciding to create a need for specific devices and therefore specific data, personal data collection, right?
Yeah.
And so by, coming and getting on the PR, riding the PR wave of what's on your iPhone rests on your iPhone, aren't we in a situation where Apple's kind of quote unquote privacy barrier actually tries to help solve a problem that they helped create? Arash, I know you have feelings about this.
I don't think they are helping the problem because they're making it even worse because they are doing it themselves again and again. So it's not helping a problem, it's not solving a problem they created. I don't think anybody will ever solve this problem because the corporations are there to make money, make profit. They don't work free. And who is the product? Subject matters. We as subject matter, we are the products, and they use us as product to sell their products to us. It's
It's very toxic, right?
yeah, call it whatever you want, but that's the reality. And what Reina said about the smartwatch, or this is our choice. I resisted myself for 6 years for buying a smartwatch. After 6 years, because of a reason, I bought it finally. But that was my, again, decision. And I try to lock it down as much as possible. But I know that somehow my data is being sent. I'm happy that on Apple, the health app and another app, I don't remember which one, they are not sending any wallet app are not sending yet any information from you, but who knows what does it in future. And it's not only Apple, all companies are doing. For me, it comes again to the same thing. At the end of the day, it's up to us to protect our data. It's not like you say, I have a best antivirus on my computer, I'm safe now. It's an illusion. I have an airbag, I have 16 plus 4 airbags in my car, so I can drive 230. No. Everything has its limit to protect you. GDPR is a tool like airbag. These tools are there to give you a certain level of protection against data miners, like the gold diggers of 100 years ago. But at the end, how we use it, how we share our data, it's up to us, if we want to share it or not. But companies are going to continue harvesting our data, if not directly, indirectly, by getting it from other companies. I remember 20 years ago, I think about 20 years ago, I saw a program on Belgian TV. It was a report of an American company who sold medical information of Belgian patients to insurance companies in Belgium. At the time, I think about 20 years ago, it was about $1,000 per person. And it was on TV. So you see, this is something has been existed for so long, and it's not going to stop. And we should accept the reality. We should protect our data as much as we can. We have the tools, but it has to be enforced. When I look at, I get a email to give my consent, and then when I search the server location is not in EU. So that's not compliant. Have you ever done a search on Google about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you find scary things from a long time
Well, that
ago.
depends on your past.
Arish, let me add on. Arish, let me add on this. There was an experiment running in Germany a couple of months ago, and in that experiment, there was only collected Google information on one data subject, and the second person was rebuilt only by Google information, and then the original subject was brought together with the actor, was living the same way as the original one in the past 10 years, because only by adding the Google informations, what they have searched for, going to Italy to holiday, looking for new sneakers, looking for medicine, I have trouble with my wife, and all this stuff, and they rebuilt the whole life. It was incredible. And no one is asking himself what Google knows about, but all of you can go into your Google account, if you have one, and have a look on your personal research results of the past 10 years. It will shock you. You can delete it. It's your data. But only if you are aware of deleting this kind of stuff. I do not need this stuff on Google or somewhere. It's my information. And maybe this is a lesson learned out of this panel also. Log into your Google account and think about whether it's worth to have it over there or to just delete it.
Koen,
For the research results. Not for the other ones.
anything scary to share with us?
No. I hope nobody will search for me on Google. So.
But that's for very different reasons.
I already did, Con.
No, but that's because nobody can spell your name like mine,
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're safe.
No, I think that indeed, just like we mentioned before, it starts for a big part with the subject, with us. But on the other hand, we as an experts in privacy and in security, we need to be careful, and we need to stay ahead of things and try to work on a decent world where data is processed like we can expect. And that's a bit the thing with the GDPR legislation. Also, it's your airbag of the data processing, that it's the data being processed in a right way, and they need to follow certain rules. And as long as they follow certain rules, then also the subject has, like you can go to Google and delete your search history, then you have the tools. But unfortunately, if we see the big tech companies like Apple, like Google, like Amazon, like Microsoft, yeah, I think that they can do better than they do today. And maybe we, as experts in the field, we need to fight for that they can, day after day, try to do better transparency, better asking for consent, those kind of things. That's up to us. Us, not as a subject, but as an expert in the field of privacy and security.
Yes, privacy is your personal right, and you have to claim it. Otherwise, you don't get it. It's up to you to use these tools, legislations, laws, regulations, to claim your right on your privacy. And sometimes I ask the questions of people, are you aware what you are sharing? Yes, I have nothing to hide. That's most of the time I get that. And I say it's not about that you have something to hide. It's about your privacy, and privacy has nothing to do with hiding something. I said, would you give that information to me? You know me, I'm your colleague. Would you give that information to me? Would you let me look into your smartphone, into your messages, into your emails, into your chats, in your photos? They say no. Say, but you are sharing it with a lot of companies without you knowing it. You see, it comes again about awareness. Awareness is the most important thing. People are not aware. People are used to, and people tend to forget. I have a friend who has been trapped for phishing twice in less than a year. Every time.
And still a friend?
Yes, because she calls me at 10 o'clock, and I know why she calls me at 10 o'clock, because her email account has been hacked and she can't get into it, and I have to help her. And because every time she gets an email with a nice promise of winning something or getting money, and how many times I have told her there's nothing free doesn't mean. Nothing is free these days. It has never been. And people tend to forget because it's our mind, our brain, I think, has been made that way. We forget a lot of things. But at the end of the year, it's up to us to be conscious.
Thank you. We have 15 minutes for questions. And so we have a few. Okay. I need the mic. So there is a Mr. there, a lady here, and I think you, sir, yes. So let's take your first question. No, sorry. Yeah, because he was, no, because the person with the mic was back to me, so, yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask so thank you very much for the tackling the subject. It's very interesting, especially as an Apple customer. I haven't got the watch, but I've got the computer and the phone, which is already a lot. Do you know if Apple reacted or is about to react by implementing a functionality whereby, in a simple and easy way, you can basically change your mind and say, I'm not sharing anymore with anything that's on my device? Do you know if it's in the pipeline for with Apple to implement such a thing, like to fix the mistake? Is my question clear?
Yes, I think.
But how can I answer that question? Because if I understood your question well, I cannot answer because I'm not at Apple. Because I read that article. Apple has been silent now. They haven't responded to for comment on that breaking the privacy law in California. I think if Apple lose the case, and I hope they lose.
And he's also an Apple user, huh?
Yes, but I'm not paid by Apple, and even if I paid by Apple, I try always to tell the truth and say the reality. And at the end of the year, I'm myself a subject matter, so I have to tell the truth because I'm fooling myself. So I hope they lose, and after that, maybe they keep up their promise. But for the moment, no, because even there is a setting. Apple has built in about 10 controls in iOS to give you different options to secure your device.
Per app?
Not app, iPhone, the iOS settings itself, including the sharing your data, like analytics data. There is a setting, you can turn it off, and the Apple said analytics is completely off. We are not sending anything, but they are sending music app, App Store. You know, the amount of data is being sent is crazy. App Store records how much time you have been on App Store, what apps have you checked, what publicity advertisement have you looked, where have you tapped, and then they can see, they can get some very sensitive personal data about you. If you go consult like application about heart disease or health, they can know you have problem, or sexual orientation of beliefs. So I don't think they are doing.
So just Mike.
So try DuckDuckGo. There's a privacy setting right now in the DuckDuckGo that proves your point is how many data tracking you have. Try it on Apple.
Well,
Proves your.
there are many applications that you can install free, and they are really good because they are open source and they have been checked constantly by researchers, security researchers, and they are not sharing any information. They are not saving any information. Like Kuhn said, Ralph said about Google deleting your stuff. I personally don't think even if you delete all your records, it's deleted. Because I remember when I joined Facebook long time ago, yes, I don't use it anymore, but long time ago when I joined Facebook, I started to read. By the way, how many of you has already read the user agreement of an app or software?
Who reads them every time?
Completely. And how many times have you done it? And how many times have you done it? Be honest.
Every time.
You do it every time?
Yeah.
Once, yes. I have done it twice. And I was pulling on my hair and said, I'm not going to do it anymore because I spent more than 2 hours. And let's forget about the jargon. There are things in it that they are not clear. You don't even understand. So what after what you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's, because there are other questions. I know we can sit and have that discussion for hours. I just want to have to give the opportunity to other people to ask questions. Mics, please, to the person there, and then to the lady to the front. Yeah, can you raise your hand? Yeah, because he can see you.
Just a quick question on terms of use of the applications. I mean, you mentioned that Google is not tracking you, but by the way, read the terms of use of Google. They are reading your mail constantly because you sign off using the app, their terms of use.
Yes.
So the question is that, and the same thing for Twitter, we had the mean discussions right now going on. Simply by using this private application, you are consenting in their terms of use. So how do you map up the rules that this company makes versus the public rules, meaning what the government makes in regulations?
Who wants to take that one? Koen, Ralph?
No one is taking care about this.
No.
They all want to get the features, No one is reading all the stuff and giving the consent. No one of us knows where did you give consent in your life? What have you agreed on, what kind of terms of use? No one can imagine what's going on over there. And even if you try to read it, you cannot understand it. It's not written for us as a people. And this is of course a pity, yes. And you asked for the next feature of Apple, where they have maybe some kind of a switch. They can switch it off. Well, you can switch off the phone. So no, you cannot switch off a phone. You just think you switch off the phone, but this is not switched off at all. This is a starting point, but meanwhile you could delete all this kind of apps you really did not use in the past months. This would become a good starting point because no one knows what all the additional, fancy beauty apps and all this stuff on your smartphone collects on data and chases you also. So this is a good starting point, just to delete everything on your smartphone you do not need to use every day. You can reinstall it later if you need it really, but meanwhile, just get it rid of. It's like, collect all the things at home you do not use, just get rid of it. It makes life much more easier.
Yeah, maybe just a small thing, the terms of use. Why is it there? Is it just to cover their ass, or is it to be as transparent as possible to the user? It's just to cover their ass, and otherwise.
Language.
Yeah?
Language.
Yeah. and I think that if you have a transparent overview of what data will be collected and for what purpose, then I think that it will only be a half a paper for the most of the apps. But they make it so hard to read, so long, that here were, I think, 7 people who raised their hands that they read all the terms of use, but Normally, normal people, they don't read those terms of use because indeed you need to read for 2 hours. It's just to cover their ass, and that's the only reason why they offer it.
Just a small input on that, if you're interested. There used to be a civil society collective which was called TOS-DR. It was like terms of service didn't read, as an analogy to TLDR, too long didn't read. But well, TOS-DR doesn't really exist anymore because it was like all volunteers and we don't have time anymore. But now the French ambassador for digital affairs, his cabinet has started an initiative that's called Open Archive, where they track terms of services and the changes to them. Because what TOS-DR was doing in the beginning was to try and give a grade, like A, B, C, D. Who are the people, whose terms of services respect GDPR, for example? Because this point about making terms of services understandable by normal people, not legalese, like, people who do that for a living like us, that's a requirement in GDPR that nobody's respecting anyway. And so there is this initiative, and it's open data, and anyone can go and look after it, and see what's there. So maybe that's something you can look at and see whether it helps you already and people around you with gaining a better understanding of, how are they eating us every day. A mic for the lady here, and then the lady and sir there. And I think we'll be, we have 6 minutes. Lady here, to the...
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the presentation, but I have just one general question. So maybe today we are talking about the opting out of data tracking using Apple's and IT systems in general, but how about the data which are collected via a verbal consent? So how can we ensure the right of data subjects, right to rectify or ask for data deletion?
Same.
Thank you.
Do you guys have an answer to that question? Or should I do it?
Yeah. I think that, just like Rolf mentioned before, if you have a look on Google, it's up to the data subject to see how can we ask deletion of our data. And for now, at Apple at least, for me, just like I mentioned before, everything starts with certain topics from our GDPR, just like transparency. And such kind of thing are not transparent enough from my point of view. Where can you ask for the deletion of your data once you give, or you opt out it for the tracking of the data? What with the data that you already give to Apple and which was tracked in the past? It's not because you opted out now that all those data will be deleted. But how can you then ask them to delete the data? For me, that's not clear. I don't know, Ralph, or...
May I add something?
Yeah, but quickly.
Yes. Actually, it might sound weird again, but whatever you put on the internet, you are not its owner anymore. Take that, remember that whatever you put, and that was exactly mentioned in the user agreement of Facebook in 2008.
Yes.
If you upload a photo of yourself on Facebook, you are not the owner anymore. Facebook is the owner of your photo. And that's with everything. Because we don't read the agreement. Read it again, maybe you will see it. It's there. So.
Let's continue this outside because we have like 3 minutes left, and I still have 2 people asking questions.
We can discuss
To
outside.
the lady.
Discuss afterwards.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, yes.
Hello, thanks for your presentations. I understand that here a lot of privacy and security specialists and compliance with these regulations are our bread. But nevertheless, don't you think that privacy issue is overestimated and these problems that we discuss, we perceive very seriously, instead they are not such? And why? Thank you.
Who want to take this one?
A fundamental right can never be overestimated. But you know, it's a matter of our time. We're living in 2022, and by collecting data, improving, for instance, medicine and so many really valuable topics, it's really valuable also to collect data, make the best out of it. But in that moment, it's not important whether this is the data of Ralph, of Arash, of Cohn, of Renner. Yeah, just collecting the data, improving, developing, bringing us as human beings in the right direction. And this is the oil of the 21st century, the same as Jan Philipp Albrecht already has mentioned when he worked really hard between 2010 and 2016 on GDPR. Then it was approved and then it became effective in 2018. So this was quite a huge story. And others also outside European Union, if I talk to the US guys, to president of US corporation with about 50,000 employees, they really take GDPR as a model into account. They say, okay, it's about privacy on the one hand, but we want to stay in control on any kind of data and just help us. How do you handle this inside European Union? What can we learn from you to adopt this? And maybe one day we will have also one common regulation act or what else. And the first step of course, the executive order Biden just has signed. So this is the next step. And I think collecting the data, making all of the best of it, and on the other hand, respect to the personal data and to the subjects, and bringing this into the balance. This is really, really valuable to get up in the morning every day for. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last question.
Yeah, well, basically, my question was about overestimating privacy, and Anastasia asked already the question. One thing also I am noticing is that we have two parties here. We have the data subject, and then we have manufacturers or providers. So they have the rights. Service providers or manufacturers, they are looking for something. They also have some rights, and data subject has some rights as well. So now it's looking the balance between the data subject and the service provider. So, which I think maybe that is something expert here that we have in this hall will be looking into it and come to a compromise at some point to see what kind of data or what kind of information you are allowed to keep or to treat or wherever. But privacy, in its whole sense, will never come to pass.
Okay, I think that was a very, well, not uplifting exactly conclusion. Guys, last words, perhaps a comment to this, your book, because I want everyone to have an idea about what you last read and what was nice about it. And then we can go have coffee and continue discussions, differently without having the time constraint here. Go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, my last book was one in Dutch, and that was, sorry, but that was On Live, and it's about the use of data via the internet, but also via IoT devices. And it was written by a professor at the University of Brussels. And it was interesting because it was a bit related with the topics that just mentioned. Can we ever overestimate privacy? If you see in the history, 120 years ago, the first car came and the users of a car, the Ford, General Motors and so on, they also need to respect the rules. Building a flying car, it was not allowed in the past, maybe it will be in the future, but they need to follow some rules. And that's more or less the same. If you go to have a look in innovation, there needs to be some rules to set some borders that every person has some rights, and certainly related to privacy is a human right, and I think that all companies need to respect human rights. And that's maybe something that was in the book On Life, for the people who speak Dutch or can read it. It's absolutely some of the books that I can suggest.
Thank you, Koen. Arash?
The last book I bought, I haven't started it yet, because it's for my holiday period at the end of the year. It's called Permanent Record by Edward Snowden. And I just read a couple of pages, and I had read about it before. And if you read that book, and I don't think you would ever think that we are overestimating the data privacy violation, etc. And we are underestimating it. The amount of data that has been collected from every one of us is unbelievable, is so significant we cannot even imagine. And the only thing I can add is, again, it's about awareness. Know your right, know what you are sharing and what happens with your data, what's the consequences, and then make the right choice. If you want to share your data, that's all fine, it's up to you, it's your right, but you have to claim it and know that you have that right. And there are regulations, legislation to help you protect yourself. And at the end, that's my personal, again, mindset, zero trust. And that's been used for the past couple of years by big companies, and Microsoft is promoting it. It's not exaggerating.
Thank you, Arash. Ralph?
Yeah, my last book was from Mark Ellsberg, Blackout. And if you read about this and imagine losing power means in 3 days losing first civilization, meaning in 10 days we are killing each other because you're getting cold, you have nothing to eat, no fuel station, no money, nothing, no food, nothing, within a couple of days. And actually in 2022 I'm a child of the Cold War. I never could have imagined that we have this discussion again. Incredible. So as long as we can talk about the Charter of the Human Rights and GDPR as a part out of it, as long as we can continue this discussion, everything is fine. And this is my closing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Let's go for coffee. And thank you again for your good spirits and participation.
Thank you very much. And don't throw away your iPhones.
Not yet. Bonjour. Oui.
Hi, hi, good to see you, good to see you. Hi.
It's still safer in all ways. Every imaginable way.